number 485. We got a lot to talk about today, but I will let our fearless CEO, Tim, take the floor. Tim?
How do you know how fearless I am? I might not be feeling very fearless right now. Hey, great to have everybody here, and hope everybody's having a great start to their summer. We do have a few things we want to kick around today, and Jim has been busy getting some things done. Finally got him to do a little work, and that's always a hard thing to do, but we've had some success there. Got him engaged in doing some things, so I'm excited about that, and we're going to hear from him. A couple of things just to make a point of clearly that this is your meeting as well as ours, and we really, really appreciate the fact that the last several times we've had a great amount of participation. A lot of people have chimed in, have offered a lot of feedback, and there are great things are happening, and we're getting a lot of good stuff. So we really do appreciate that. I'm tickled with that, and so that's kind of how we're going forward. I want you to know to please raise your hand. We will call on you. We're excited about doing that, and we're excited to work with you. And please raise your hands and let us help you do anything that you'd like to do, and comment on anything else that you'd like to comment on. If you look to the bottom of your screen, you'll see the button that says raise your hand, and do that, and we'll be rocking and rolling. Actually, before we do anything else, I saw that Bernie, you have a question, and we'll get to your question shortly. We've got a few things we want to cover. We definitely have a question kind of out of the chute, and we will take that when we get to it. And with that, I'm going to kick it back to Jim. Jim, you got a few things you want to talk about. Let's start there, bud.
Absolutely. By the way, when I saw broker Bernie, I thought Bernie Sanders went into real estate. Have you ever heard that before? You look a little bit like him.
Oh, come on.
Moving
No,
along.
okay. Never mind. Yeah, I think we'll start with the story, and then we have a call to action. I'm going to ask for your guys' help. Had something interesting happen this week. I was contacted by one of our people, and they said I could use some help. I've got a friend. He's a wholesaler. First of all, this guy that contacted us was in Utah. His friend, who was a wholesaler, was in Minnesota, and he had a house under contract in New Jersey. So he said what the guy tells me is the house is worth somewhere between 1.1 and 1.6 million, and he wants to sell his contract for 850. And he said the house really doesn't need very much work. And of course, my BS meter went off. It sounded too good to be true. So I just did a quick Google and determined, yeah, it probably was worth over a million. So first thing I did, I went to our database of subscribers, and we had a subscriber in that area for almost 7 years, getting 6 counties. So wasn't even close who I called first. And I got him on the phone. His name was Chris, and he said, "Oh yeah, there's nothing in that neighborhood for under a million." He said, "Matter of fact, I've got a buyer for it." He said, and he made an appointment. He's meeting his buyer out there tomorrow to do the interior inspections, but it's a done deal already. So then I called, which is kind of interesting. So then I had a long conversation with the wholesaler, and I was very impressed with his professionalism. I said to him, we've got several people involved here. Is it going to be a problem getting everybody paid? And he said, no, I've got a great title company, no problem. That's not going to be an issue. Said, I've already done inspections. We've already checked the title. I'm having an appraisal done. I'll give that to the buyer. So I said to him, honestly, I know a lot of wholesalers are kind of wannabe. They're looking to make 5 or 10 grand, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I said, you really seem like a professional. I'm impressed. Obviously, you've been doing this a long time. How many deals have you done? He said, well, this will be my 3rd deal. He said, actually, I started doing it last summer. And he said, I've never told anybody this, but I'm a college student.
Mm.
I just run marketing ads all over the country, and then I talk to the people, I get them under contract, and then I flip the contracts. So I 2 things that I learned there: that wholesale doesn't necessarily mean 5 or 10 grand. You can make a lot of money on some of these deals if you buy them right. Apparently, the original and the house doesn't need much work. So it was just a diamond in the rough. So that kind of inspired me that there really is money to be made in wholesaling, and also inspired me the value of having people like you with the boots on the ground. We can have somebody run out there and we can kind of offer that as an added value to our subscribers. And it also inspired me that this kid who's still in college, he didn't even tell me what he made on it. And actually talking to him, he said, well, I think I can be honest with you. I'm looking for 825. So I said to our agent there, well, if you already quoted 850, there's 25,000 for you. I mean, this is one of those rare deals where there's enough for everybody to get paid. And I was really inspired by the possibility of it being able to be done, and especially by somebody who's so inexperienced. And I think, Tim, you wanted to take it from there. It just we wanted to throw it out to all of you. Tim, I'll let you do the next part.
Me?
Well, yeah, you said you wanted to encourage. Well, I'll go ahead and do it. I just want to encourage all of you. If you have deals like that, this is something I'm particularly good at, and I love doing. But if you have something you're not, and it really seems to make sense, you don't know what to do with it, we've got boots on the ground, multiple boots on the ground, almost everywhere in the country. We've got a lot of experienced agents that do know what to do with it. And whenever possible, we'll make sure everybody in the line gets paid. You know, we don't expect any of you to do anything for free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole.
And remember us out in Las Vegas. If you got any deals out here, I'm ready to buy.
Absolutely.
Are you going to get a hat with another bill, one on the front and the back?
If I get enough money, if I make that 25 G's, then probably.
All right. So, and I was being facetious, Jim. Yeah, I wanted to point out that we are interested in doing that. We certainly are very willing to, work with you guys. Steve, I saw what you typed. I got it. Thank you very much. The issue is that we want to try to clear these through one place, not just shotgun it. So if you have something and you need someone to move something through, we're going to use Jim as a clearinghouse for this. Jim has real estate license. He's got all the things necessary to make a lot of these things happen. And he's been doing this longer than, some of us on this call have been alive, not me, of course, but there are a lot of things that we can do to make this work. And we want to try to use Jim as the clearinghouse. And most people tend to some people like to talk to Jim on the phone, and, it works out reasonably well to do that. But all kidding aside, it's not the first time this has happened, and we've never really tried to somewhat institutionalize this. We're not going to build software to go do it because it's just something that every deal is different. But if you find something and you want someone to work with, give Jim a buzz and let's kind of go from there, and we'll take it from there and make it happen. And it'll keep Jim busy, and he won't get in other trouble, which is equally important.
And then, Tim, we had the other call to action. You want to wait for later in the call, or do you want to talk about that now too?
Go ahead.
All right. Another thing I've been looking at, guys, and I've been doing as much homework as I could. The new NAR regulations in nationwide, they are strongly suggesting that they be implemented by August 17th. And the deadline to have them all in place is September 16th. So we're coming up on a couple months until a lot of the ways and the procedures and the paperwork that is being done nationwide is going to have to change to stay in compliance and to protect everybody. And it's bizarre to me. To me, it makes no sense. I saw this from my multiple listing, and I thought it was just my MLS, but this is nationwide. There's changes as to how real estate professionals communicate with each other about compensation. Multiple listing services are no longer allowing the mention of any compensation. Sellers can still offer compensation off of MLS. So basically, a buyer's agent has to call every property they're going to show, I guess, and say, how much are you willing to pay me, which is stupid to me. But it also occurred to me that we're all going to have to, everybody who's active is going to have a really good comprehensive seller disclosure. If the seller chooses to pay, the seller needs to sign, hey, I've been told I don't have to, and here's how much I'm willing to pay. And everybody's going to have a really good buyer disclosure. You can't put a buyer in your car without doing it, how they're going to get paid. And my understanding is you can't even say to a buyer, the secret code is seller will pay buyer's closing costs, which means we'll cooperate. But you can't say to a buyer, if that happens, then, you don't owe me anything. You have to have a firm agreement. So we've got some brilliant minds on this call. It occurred to me that many of you may already have in place something you developed, the buyer seller forms, or your broker has, or your company has. And if you guys would share those with us, we're going to try to compile the greatest hits and put together like a recommended form, with all the proper disclosures, have our attorney look at it, and have something on our website that you guys can grab and use if you haven't developed something on your own. So basically, if you have developed something on your own, please send it to us. So where do you want them to send that to, Tim?
Why to you, Jim?
What a surprise. Well, I'm not the best detail person, but I'll forward it on to Alyssa or one of the other people to look at. That's fine. Send it to me also, Jim@alltheleads.com.
I want you to look at it first. This is your idea, and I want you to look at it because you're the one that needs to, kind of see which ones make the best sense. And the idea is to put something together that covers all the bases, no matter where you could possibly be, and then give it back to you guys in a format where you can customize it based on anything that's being required of you by your broker, your local MLS, or whatever, but give you something to work with rather than, trying to put something together without any background or anything done. And the other side of that is, like Jim said, this is a collective mind, and we get a lot from you guys. You know what you're doing. You also know what's being required of you locally. So we're just trying to be a clearinghouse, not only for deals, but for information. Part of why we're here is to make this community work well. And that's what you guys are part of a great community. And so we want to use your brains wherever we can. And you're the feet on the street to make that happen. So that's kind of what that's about. And just send it to Jim@alltheleads and alltheleads.com, and Jim will get it, and we'll take it from there. And we'll, in the next couple of weeks, we'll try to distill this, put it all back together, and put something back out for you.
Perfect.
Okay. Good
Yes,
deal.
sir. That's it.
That's awesome. So we've got a couple of questions that came up early, and I'm gonna Bernie, I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself there and let you ask your question, if you would, please, sir.
Yes. Hi. I'm sorry. You're not Jim. What's your name? I'm sorry.
It's
Tim.
Tim.
And
Yeah. I'm in California, and I'm wondering, just in the filing for your probate petition, how long after the death does that have to be filed? Is there a time limit, or can that go for more than a year?
We've got a bunch of California folks here, so if you're in California, I want you guys to jump in and clarify. But they're really pretty much anywhere. There isn't a time limit that the family has to file.
Okay.
If the bills are being paid somehow, then nobody really cares if it's filed or not. Now, they can't go and sell assets until they've filed and they've received approval.
Okay.
So you'll see people that file a week after the loss. You'll see people that file 7 years after the loss. I'm not in California, but the longest I've seen is 18 years.
Okay. Well,
Winston, you're in and you're out there. What's the scoop, bud?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I've seen there, guys, is working out the ATL leads. It's not uncommon to see it go several years. Okay. I've seen 10 years. I've seen 15 years. I can even top Bruce's 18. I've seen it go 20. There's a financial planner that I'm working with that has a client. Her folks passed away 23 years ago, and she's not filed for probate yet. So I've never seen any type of limitation. And out here, it's kind of crazy. It can go years and years and years.
okay. Well, that helps me understand. How about with the taking a cash advance on the inheritance? Who is funding that? Is that done by the executor out of the money that's in the estate, or
No.
where does
No.
that come from?
It's funded by the company that makes the offer, and they are doing it against the sale of the property. So let's be real clear, just real specifically how that works is that Probate Cash is the company, and what they do is they advance the funds based on the attorney in the case. There's always got to be an attorney involved. The attorney in the case has to, in fact, certify that the person who is asking for the advance is, in fact, named in the will, does stand to inherit, and the two pieces that they look for is that they stand to inherit and that there is an established and acceptable value of the estate that's being settled, particularly the real estate, so that there's enough money to repay the cash advance. But
how does the person, how do they get paid? The people making the advance, they got to get paid somehow, yet our material says it's no cost.
Well, there's obviously a cost. They got to get their money back. The person who is making the advance or is asking for the advance signs an agreement to pay.
Yeah, no, I understand that they get their principal back, but they've got to make some money on that money, interest money.
Agreement is in the agreement that comes from the probate cash people and the person getting the allowance, getting the advance.
So it is a cost to the estate. So our material that says at no cost to you is a little bit misleading, correct?
No, it's not. It's not misleading. It's just not out of pocket. They're not coming up with money out of their pocket.
Okay.
That's
All
the
right.
whole point.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet, bud. Thank you. Good question. And we had one other hand up here. Where did you go? You snuck out. We had another hand up and see them.
Yeah, I would suspect with that cash advance, so all the terms would be laid out at the time of agreeing to that.
Yeah.
To the money. So yeah, I mean they're very professional, so they're gonna lay out all the terms so the client will understand what they're gonna pay.
Yeah, for sure. That's the case. And they lay it out within the terms of the agreement so that, and basically what they're doing is two things to be critically aware of. One is that indeed it is an advance, not a loan, and there are specific requirements for a cash advance as opposed to a loan, and that's kind of the key element you got to be aware of. So we always want to make it really clear that it's referred to as an advance, not a loan. Anyway, that's kind of the scoop on that. So I'm going to kind of kick it back to the coaches again. Folks, please raise your hands. We're excited to talk to you. We want to hear what you have to say, and all those things are extremely important. And anything else that you want to do, make this your call, and let's make sure we get it. Ron made a great point. It says lunch is never free. So Bruce, what's going on with you, bud?
Oh man, a lot. So hopefully I will kick off some questions here, and I'll just remind everyone that the coaches on the call, we're all here to answer your business questions. We want to hear what you guys are up to. We want to get your questions on strategy, deals, different things like that. I want to speak briefly to the notion of working for business today, working for a paycheck today, and working for a paycheck tomorrow. This is a balancing act that a lot of us aren't very good at playing. And I coach on this stuff. I teach this stuff all day long. And sometimes I don't get very good at playing the today business versus the tomorrow business game. Okay, so I want everyone to be consciously aware that you are building a business, you're building a pipeline for tomorrow, you're building assets into your business that are supposed to go work for you tomorrow and give you a better, easier, more streamlined business for tomorrow. So I want to encourage everyone to continue to work on assets and systems that you can put in your business that'll go work for you. I like to say work for you and earn you a living when you're sleeping. Those are things like YouTube channels and videos and classes that you do and relationships that you build and those things that you're doing in your on your business during the week that are going to produce a pipeline of business for you in the future. You work on it once and it goes and works for you forever moving forward. But you also need to focus on today. You have to focus on today. And the thing that I see most often are people leaning too heavily to one side or the other. My temptation is to lean too heavily toward working on systems. And I'll spend 50 hours this week working on systems and I won't make a phone call. or I won't follow up with a lead. There's other folks that they spend all their time working on the business that they have today. Hey, I've got 3 contracts and I'm going to spend all this time taking care of those things and talking to the inspector and talking to the attorney and the title company and the lender and calling and making sure that my clients are informed and all the good things that you need to be doing. Or maybe you're spending all your time on the phone slowly and methodically dialing through your leads. Or worse, maybe you're spending all your time trying to get the scoop and looking up the Facebook profiles of every single lead in your database, okay, without making a call. Okay, all these things are areas that I see people put all their energy into and they're skipping some of the important things. So briefly, I just want to tell you guys what happens when you balance your business out. So this last week, I noticed that my business was all in building coaching curriculums and courses and all these different things that you guys are going to benefit from. But I hadn't been following up on leads. And I decided that I was going to take some time this past week. It's Thursday, so a week ago, and spend some time following up on old leads. And I called an old lead that I got a year ago, and that one of my ISAs had actually warmed up a year ago. I've never talked to her. And I looked it up. I found that the property seemed to still be in the name of the estate. So I called her and she said, yeah, I have been thinking about selling. We put some renters in there over the last year and they just moved out. I don't like being a landlord. They messed the house up. You can come look at it. So this is a lead from a year ago. I go out, I looked at the property. It turned out to be a property that's perfect for a flip. It would be a problem if we tried to list this on the market. And those of you that have been around me know that I'm about 75, 80% leaning toward listing, 20% leaning toward making a cash offer. So I presented this lady with a couple of different options. I said, I can manage your flip for you. You give me a management fee to manage your flip because she has money, no contractors, and no energy. So you give me a fee to manage your flip. You can hold title. Option 2, you can hold title and I will fund and manage the flip. And this is how much I would make. Or option 3, I can buy the house right now. And she said, let's go with option 3. So we got a contract on the house. And she said, by the way, I've got my personal house on the market and I haven't been able to get anyone any interest on it. Wow. And she showed me the personal house and asked me for some strategy. And I said, I think you need to offer a second mortgage that's owner financed. So let your buyer get their first mortgage, but it's a big price on the house. You need to offer a down payment basically as a second mortgage that you owner finance at 0% for the next 2 years. There you go. She said, nobody else ever told me about this. And I said, do it. She got it under contract within a couple of days. They went to some of the people that had looked, got it under contract. She called me and she said, Bruce, thanks for the advice. We've got a contract on this house that we're working on now that you're buying. I have 27 more rental properties that I'm going to be letting go of over the next 2 years. And most of them need work. You're the first person I'm coming to on all these. Okay. All of this from someone that I almost lost completely because I've been spending all my time on the business and not making follow-ups and not having conversations. So if you guys are in a position where you're spending too much time working in the business and not building assets that work for you, start building some assets. If you're spending too much time working on your systems and assets in your business and not enough time building relationships, start building relationships. The bottom line is you need to balance things out and you need to make extra sure that that not only is there balance, but you're also focused on those leads that you think are cold. Okay. Because if I hadn't called this person that started probate over a year ago, I wouldn't have gotten these deals. Right. So Jim, what do you got?
Bruce, we talked about that. I know you weren't here last week, but we talked about the program you just mentioned. There's institutional lender now that's offering exact same thing that I've seen ads for, where we'll lend you the down payment at 0% interest. And we talked about we talked about that, and I'm just curious if you know, we were talking about how programs like that and easier lending is going to precipitate more foreclosures down the road. Not necessarily, but in some cases. How does the first lender look at that if they're borrowing the second down payment? Is it okay as long as it's 20% because there's
It
no
counts.
PMI?
Yeah, as long as it covers their down payment and as long as it doesn't impact as long as it doesn't kick the debt to income over their ratio.
And it eliminates the PMI, which is significant. So it's actually probably, even if you have to charge a little bit higher interest rate, if they have to pay a higher interest rate on the normal loan, the PMI would more than make up for it. So yeah. So did they steal that idea from you, or did you see that and copy it?
No, I've never seen anyone else do that. They must have stolen it from me.
I think so. It's an institutional lender that's offering that. I don't even remember who it is, but we talked about that on the last call. Very interesting. Yeah, great idea. Thank you.
We got to be creative, guys. That's the thing is we've got to learn how to be creative with our clients and offer advice that helps them facilitate transactions, and giving sellers options, especially in a market where they're used to dealing with agents who have passed a state test in class, and they don't teach you this stuff in classes when you're getting a real estate license. Some of the investor gurus teach different creative things like this, but the bottom just needs solver and off solutions and options to our sellers. This woman had already gotten offers from other people. Those folks were coming in saying, hey, I'm just going to buy the house. Nobody told her that, hey, I can manage your flip for you. Hey, I can fund your flip for you. Hey, I can list the property for you. Nobody told her these things. And the simple fact that she had several different choices to choose from, and I wasn't pushing, let her feel good about working with me and cutting out anyone else that she'd talked to out. And I almost lost it, but it wasn't because I offered options. It was simply because I hadn't followed up.
Steve?
Yeah, so Bruce, what I want to say is thanks for setting the example. Obviously, I think we can all learn from that because you never know with a call what's behind it. And I think your point about creative is really key. If that property that she did put under contract with I guess for the down payment with no interest, they're free and clear.
It is
Two is how a qualified buyer maybe is outside of financing right now for a mortgage. We do the credit check and everything, and then in a period of 2 to 3 years, she's collecting rent, has no responsibilities in terms of being a landlord because you're putting a qualified buyer owner into the property, and they become qualified, then they cash her out. She makes more money as a result. So she gets all the benefits of being a landlord and none of the headaches because you can still claim depreciation or any tax on that as well. And I think that's what we're looking at. A lot of people, they're saying, I read an article this morning that a lot of mortgages are flat right now. People are walking away, even with lower rates. They still aren't feeling good about it. Fracture still up. Sure, qualified buyers are out there. But I think like your point, you don't want to set somebody up for failure, even with a 0 interest down payment. You don't want them to be underwater. Hopefully there's a little bit of equity they're going to claim from that, even when they do go to finally close. So that's really exceptional, is all I want to say. And, I can be admirable not only of those who are here in our community, but also coaches, what you're doing in terms of how you solve someone else's problem. And it looks like you've established trust and rapport if you're looking at 27 down the road. Great job.
Thank you. Much appreciated. By the way, folks, it looks like I've got 27 flips that need to be funded. If anyone wants to partner on a flip,
there you go.
I may have an opportunity if you guys reach out to me.
I
I can't flip 27 properties
think all
with my cash.
All the coaches are raising their hand. We might trust you a little bit. Reach out after the call. Hey, Bruce, I was going to add one thing, and there's 2 elements to that. It's not only being creative, but it's being honest. You reminded me of the, we always talk, which hat are you wearing, the realtor or the investor? And I would be brutally honest with them about what the property was worth. And I most of the properties I bought, it was because I was honest with them up front of what it was worth. I didn't try, I told the story, the guy, I told him it's probably worth 300. I give you 210 cash, close quick. And he called me back a couple weeks later and said everybody else told him it was worth 185. And I mean, people know, they can Google, they're going to find out anyway. So there's two elements there. It's being creative, but it's being honest. People respect both. If you do, you're in good shape.
Yeah, to that point, I didn't bring up what happened when I first reached the woman last week. It had been a year. I remembered her. She had no recollection of me, and she was pretty abrasive for about a minute on the phone. Pretty abrasive. Um, when you have 27 rental properties, you're gonna get a lot of calls. You're gonna get a lot of calls, and you begin to play a character. After meeting with her, she is so nice and she's talkative. The character that she plays to sniff through the BS on the phone is not nice and talkative. Okay. So she was playing the character of being a harsh person during the first minute on the phone. And I got about a minute in, and I can't remember what prompted it, but I said, honestly, I'm about 80%. I play the role of a listing agent about 80% of the time, because 80% of the time it's just the best deal for the seller to list the property. And I didn't do that on purpose. I just brought that up, and
As a realtor, shake their head.
the resistance dropped immediately after that. And that's when she said, well, why don't you come out and take a look at the house? So she proposed it. And then she said, and if it works out, I may have another one coming up in a couple of weeks. And it was just like, you take this person that's playing the character of a harsh, abrasive person, and you just strip that apart by saying the right thing. And I don't know what the right thing is from one person to the other, but I was honest in that sometimes it's best to list the house and sometimes it's best to buy the house. And I don't know what's best for someone till I know their situation a little bit more. And that all of a sudden unlocked it. So being able to even share a little bit with the person on the phone, the first conversation is good. And it's really important that you guys know, when you get someone that's aggressive or abrasive on the phone, that's a character they're playing. Okay. And the question is, who's going to play the better character? Are you going to play the better character, or are they going to play the better character? Because they are playing a character. If they're mean, that's not who they are in real life. Okay. Most of the time, I want to fire back at someone who's being aggressive, rude, or mean. I want to fire back. I want to get sarcastic back. That's my default. Um, they've
Mine
got
too.
about 60 seconds worth of a character that they can play on the phone. And if you can make it through that, they don't have any more character to play. So you learn how to play the character of being influential during that first 30 or 60 seconds. And I promise the walls will drop.
Aline?
So thank you, Bruce. That was great. And I want to continue and just speak into the follow-up. And I think that was awesome that after a full year, that's what you landed. I try to be very diligent about follow-up. And oftentimes when someone will say on the phone, oh, I'm not ready, another year, another 2 years, another 6 months, whatever. And they go into a different pile. And I can't tell you how many times, heartbreaking, I've waited just a little too long. And it's literally a pattern. And I pick up the phone and I follow up a little too late. And I hear on the other line, oh, I already sold. The person who said, I'm not going to sell, or the person down like another year from now, another 2 years from now. Whatever it is, it's half the time. So if they say a year, it's typically 3 to 6 months. If they say 6 months, it's typically 2 to 3 months. And so that consistent follow-up and having that pipeline, it's gold. It's like just money sitting, waiting to be taken out of the bank or whatever, an investment. Now, oftentimes it will dwindle, but so many times it is somebody who's just waiting to be called back again. And the follow-up is as consistent and as important as the regular calls. So kudos to you for getting that.
Well, listen, the reason, Aline, that you'll love this, the reason that I called this woman is because earlier that week, an ISA had been told by another seller, completely different seller, oh, we're not selling for 5 or 6 months. And I waited a few days. I call everyone back immediately, even if they say we don't know or we're not selling for a certain amount of time. My general rule is I need to call and I need to hear it myself. At least I know it's the right person and they answer the phone. So I had not called this person back. I was like, I just trusted it's going to be 5 or 6 months. I have time. So before I call them back 3, 4 days later, I just punched the address in and they'd listed the house the day before. So they went from we're not selling for 5 or 6 months to having the house on the market 3 days later.
So painful.
It happens.
It happens. It happens all too often. And that's why that follow-up and, the now business and the later business is so crucial to balance that. I want to add one thing. So I'm not a big football fan, but I know that recently, Tom, forgive me for my lack of knowledge, but I know that recently Tom Brady just got inducted into the Hall of Fame. And the one piece of his speech that he gave was that you could be not such a great player, not such a great, or not inherently, what's the word, just talented. But if you do something consistently every day, you win at the end. You are at the top of your game because you're doing whatever you're doing, whatever that is, consistently every single day. And it's that consistency that makes somebody so great, not necessarily being like a superstar.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You give me someone that hears no 99 times a day and they're really bad on the phone. They will always beat the person that's incredibly naturally gifted and talented that tries once every 99 days.
That's right.
Hey, Bruce, I'm curious that one where 3 days later it was on the market. There's two possibilities. Do you think she really changed her mind in 3 days, or do you think you just believed her excuse or her lie at the time and she always intended to list it?
Either one. Yes. Some people lie. Bottom line is if I'd called her, my policy that I don't follow very often is you speak with anyone that's working with me, I'm going to call you that day because I don't know what your circumstances were when you got that first call. Maybe you heard an accent. Maybe you were just leaving a fight with your spouse. Maybe your kid was crying. Maybe who knows? And you just throw something out that gets somebody off of the phone. I don't really trust that answer. It's not that I think that you lied to the first person that you talked to. Maybe it was just sort of something you hadn't given any thought and you just threw it out. So it could have been a lie. It could have been that they really hadn't thought about it. And that night they started talking about what they were going to do with the house. And somebody called right in the middle of when they were talking about what they were going to do with the house. They set an appointment and that person capitalized on the appointment. It really could have been that. I've gotten a lot of business from people. One of my favorite stories is my old neighbor. I'd moved out of the neighborhood. They called me and they said, hey, we're going to buy a house in a couple of years. We just wanted to find out what we needed to do today to get ready for buying in a few years. And what we needed to do to our house to sell it. And I said, well, the first thing we need to do is maybe look at 3 or 4 houses this weekend so that you know what you're going to be finding. And they said, oh, it's too early. We're not ready to buy a house. I said, that's not a problem. I just want you to have an idea of what you're looking for so that you know it when it pops up. And they said, okay. So we went out and we looked at a few houses that weekend with no intention on their part of buying. None. Guess what happened? They bought, and I had their house listed the next week. So did they lie to me when they said, we're thinking about a year or two? No. I just gave them a frictionless way to change their mind. Okay. And they did. So when someone says 5 or 6 months, they may or may not be lying. I don't care if they're lying or not. I want to give them a frictionless way to change their mind. Okay.
I don't think that people are necessarily lying. mean, some people are, but I think a lot of people genuinely believe it's 6 months, a year, 5 months. And it's because it's change and that's difficult for people. So they always will stretch it out a lot longer than it really is, or really what's practically supposed to happen.
Yep, absolutely. They don't know. They really do believe
Mhm.
until they get information that tells them something different.
Right.
Yeah.
It's emotional.
Yep.
Go ahead, bud.
Or it could be too a phone call or a series of phone call that actually triggers a serious conversation where beforehand it was kind of like put in the back burner with other things going on. You don't know. So, but to be in the right place at the right time, that's a great benefit.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, go
Ted?
ahead and unmute yourself there, bud. Go
Yep.
ahead.
This is a great example. My wife we were looking to buy a little puppy. She wanted a schnauzer, little miniature schnauzer puppy. We were going to look for one. We decided we're going to do it in September after we got through summer and busyness of life. Guess what? Somebody sent her, she heard about it, and they called her and showed her a picture of a miniature schnauzer just like she liked. So she told her, she, I could just bring it into your office if you'd like. I said, well, we're going to Denver. So she said, well, I could do it this afternoon. And guess what? She brought it in and we put a deposit. We had to pick it up by Sunday. It was Thursday. This was Sunday. So we got that dog in May. We weren't going to do it until September, but guess what? There was a motivational factor that came in. So we have a dog we've had now for 5 weeks. So things change. And just like you said, you go out to that appointment and you just show them something, it triggers their emotions and they buy. So buy and they sell. Things happen.
Yeah, the main thing though, back to follow up obviously is important, but back to another thread in what Bruce was saying, not being attached to the outcome other than I want to be the person to help you. Right. So like I talk to a lot of wholesalers that are not licensees, that's fine and more power to you. But I think being a licensee gives you the option now to list it or to wholesale it or to flip it or to offer them other options where you're partnering with them and managing the flip. And that way you don't come off like you're trying to push them in any direction and you're remaining much more neutral and a lot less attached. And I think people do feel that. And it, like Bruce said, it lowers their guard and it makes them more likely to work with you because again, you're not, you don't come off with this agenda.
They don't smell commission breath.
100%. Yeah. So
yeah,
extremely important not to have that commission breath and just come with service and offer optionality.
Yep. Along those lines, it's one of the things that we need to work on as wholesalers, as agents, as investors, whatever you're doing. We need to work on removing the friction in between where they are and where we are. Removing the friction. A lot of us try to get people to agree to things that are laced with friction. You've got to think. You don't have a relationship with someone. They don't know you. You give them a call, maybe. If they've looked at you online or they've received some letters, that certainly reduces the friction. But you're in conversation with someone, and let's just pretend that they really don't know you very well, if at all. One of the last things that they want to do is invite you over for an appointment and tell you the truth about where they really are. They really might lie to you. Maybe they're lying, maybe they're not. I don't really want to find out the hard way whether they lied or so I want to reduce that friction. And the friction that they're trying to avoid is, let me come pitch you on my services next week. Let me come make you an offer. I want you to sign a contract with me last week. So I want you guys, everyone, to work on, and it's something that I've been working on, is how to ask no-brainer, easy questions that get a really easy yes. it's one of the really important things. You know, I lost that business last week that was was listed 3 days later. Had I called, I might have gotten a similar response to what the ISA got. I don't know. But a lot of times what I see is that person, without knowing you, they just want to say no. So many times the first question that we need to work on asking is something that's going to be really hard to say no to. So case study, this is probably 1,000 case studies. But let's just pretend that you're talking to someone who's being a little bit resistant, and you say, "Hey, can I come out and meet you Saturday and give you an hour-long listing presentation?" What are they going to say? No. Okay. Now let's take the flip side of it. Hey, you know what? I know that you guys probably aren't going to do anything for the next 5 or 6 months. Once you get closer to selling, do you think maybe I could make you an offer? Okay. Which one are they more likely to say yes to? Okay. So think about it in ways, if you guys want to lead toward appointments, which we all want, think about asking, taking baby steps into those appointments. And then gaining ground from there. So I get a yes to, hey, I know you're not doing anything for 6 months. When you're ready, in 6 months, do you think maybe I could make you an offer? Normally they say yes. And then I go, would it be okay if I shot you some preliminary numbers so that you had an idea when you discuss with family what you're looking at? That's an easy yes. Yes. And then we take a little more ground. You're going to be around sometime in the next week. Maybe I could just stop by next time you're at the house. Okay. So baby stepping into our appointment request when you're dealing with someone that is being resistant is another way to do it. So all I want you guys doing, and I'm actively working on this as well, is trying to formulate questions and ways of getting to the appointment without triggering that resistance by offering something that's harder to say no to.
Isn't it a lot of what this comes down to as well, Bruce, is that, you know, we think about when our phone rings and what we hear on the other end of that phone. What turns you off? What puts you off? What instantly flips your switch and makes you want to do nothing but get off that call? What kinds of things are you hearing? We all know those things. I mean, you got to put yourself in the position of the person that you're talking to every single time. And, you know, Bruce is an artist at painting a really good picture about how to do this. And I think that's great. But I think even in the most simple approaches to this, if you simply look at the things that you normally say in the course of conversation every day, think about the things that you hear on the other side of that, what's coming into your ears that you hear from other people. My phone rings way too many times in the course of a day. And, you know, it's always somebody who's got the next best thing that's going to help our company grow and be the, you know, greatest thing since sliced bread. And I don't want to hear it. My standard answer is, send me an email. We'll be glad to talk to you. And, you know, then I get their email, and unfortunately I delete it because I don't have time to read it. So we're not getting anywhere by doing that. And it's that same thing. If you keep saying the same thing, getting the same negative answers, you got to change your game. You know, you're beating your head against the wall. Jim, what were you going to say, bud?
That's a great tie into what I was going to say, Bruce. In my coaching career, we used to listen to tapes of people prospecting, and people would get in patterns of saying, okay, great. We used to have them write down a half a dozen different adjectives. Wonderful, fantastic, amazing. Well, the wording and how you relieve that friction. One thing I've heard you do that I think is very smart, very effective. Instead of saying, "Hey, can I make a suggestion?" I've heard you say, "Hey, would you be offended if I made a suggestion?" Very few people, nobody gets offended by a suggestion. Of course not. Much easier for them to say no, they wouldn't be offended, than to give you permission just to make a blanket suggestion. So write down words like that you can use to reduce the friction. Have that in front of you when you're prospecting. And don't use the same one every time. Use a different one in the same conversation if it happens more than once.
As far as reducing friction too, is I I think you have to be very soft spoken in most cases. I mean, you gotta consider, like, if you're 25 and you're just getting into real estate and you're talking to somebody who's 65 and she just lost somebody, you know, her husband passed or whatever, and we're coming off ultra aggressive. We got out of our sales meeting, we had 2 cups of coffee, 3 donuts, and we're all pumped up. Like we're selling at the football game with the band playing, and you gotta like lower your tonality and be very gentle so they feel safe actually having you come by their house. Because a lot of these people are like, there's no way I'm letting this very aggressive sounding person come over. Like they're actually very intimidated and afraid if you're coming off like that. So I think mirroring and maybe even lowering your volume below the person you're talking to is probably a good idea, so they feel like empowered and control of the conversation.
Yeah, mirroring and matching, basically.
Yeah.
NLP, basic old NLP. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and like I said, even maybe lowering it so they feel empowered. You know, I know in most situations you want to mirror and then be a little above them in excitement and tonality. In this situation, maybe it's better to either be at their same level or even a little lower.
One of the things that I've been working on here lately, Ken, about giving them power, or at least the illusion of power, okay? Because that's ultimately what it is. I want to be in control of the conversation. I don't want them to know that I'm in control of the conversation. Okay, so I think that a true sign of power is when you're okay giving your power away and still know the outcome of the call. So one of the things a lot of times I do, instead of saying, hey, can I call you back in 2 weeks? Can I call you back in 3 weeks? I'll say, hey, why don't I just drop you some information and then you can call me if you ever need anything. Okay. I find that really, really drops the guard of the person. Now, it just so happens that I know where I'm going to take the call once they say yes. But many times, if I've got someone that's especially resistant, I'll completely give up control of the call, knowing that it's going to make them feel comfortable, and they're going to feel like they're in more control over the call. And a lot of times, it lets me get that rapport that I need to then take charge again.
Right.
So that's really good, Ken. We did have a question on mail. I know we haven't talked about mail. Should we, do you want me to address that, Tim or Jim?
Hey, go ahead, bud.
Okay. So question came in on mail, and this was more a question. I'm not even 100% sure that I can find it. Emily. Yeah, there we go. Had asked about if anyone had tracked the percentages of contacts obtained from mailers. And I'm going to give a wildly unsatisfactory answer. But I'm going to explain some different strategy behind different ways of handling direct mail. Direct mail conversion ratios, mail to an actual phone call and a lead, varies dramatically depending on what your message is, how often your mail is going out, and what market you're in. Very dramatically. So I've got folks in hot, highly competitive markets that send 3 mailers out and get responses on every single mailer that they send out.
Wow.
Some of those responses are remove me from your list right now. You're a terrible person. Some of those responses are to the same exact letter, or this is exactly what I needed. Please come sell my house. Okay. Those are on aggressive real estate forward letters. Okay. I tend to go softer in my market, and I'm in a very competitive market as well. I go softer for 7 or 8 months, and I don't expect a response on my mail. About once every 3, 4, 5 months. I don't know, that's big range, but once every quarter or so, if not longer, I'll get a good response and I'll go out and I'll take a listing off of my mail. But my goal when I send 6 months worth of mail is when I get someone on the phone that they already know who I am. So I go soft for a very long period of time. And if I got 0% response from my mail, I'd be okay with it, because I know that I'm going to build my relationships through my vendors and from phone calls. Other people don't have that budget to be able to do that. So if you don't have the budget, you might want to go shorter campaign, more aggressive letter. So it really depends. I know people that send the same letters in different markets, and one market, one county away from another one will get no response on that series of 3 or 4 letters, where a county over gets a great response. So it's really unsatisfactory, because we can't give you the exact data, because it's going to vary from market to market. But I am a proponent of a mailing campaign. And even though I'm a proponent of a mailing campaign, I would still prepare everyone to make sure that most of your relationships come from the phone. But most of the time when you're making that call, that it's going to be a lot warmer, and they're going to know who you are, and they're going to trust you a little bit when you get them on the phone the first time, if you've also done mailers.
Yeah, and Bruce, I want to add one other thing. The thing that everybody who does any sort of marketing frequently says is always be testing. And it's kind of a watchword for this. And too often, we get trapped into doing the same thing over and over again. We talked about that kind of on our phone approach. The other thing about that is that, from time to time, make some changes to your letter that's going out, or change to a postcard and a letter in the same month. Do something that's different, and make sure that no matter what you're doing, you do track your results. Even if it's what Bruce said, and it's down to, all right, I'm maybe not getting exactly the response I wanted on the letters themselves, but when you talk to someone on the phone, have you gotten my letter? Well, yes. Make sure that if you're hearing, yes, they did get it, they're aware of you, that's what you're looking for. And it even kind of ties back to the ISA program that we're talking about and have been working with now for several months with appointments today. They've, kind of worked into a category called nurture. And when they get someone into a nurturing mode, it means that they're certainly willing to talk to the person they're making the calls for. They've not necessarily locked in an appointment, but it's the same thing that we talked about earlier that Bruce mentioned, and everybody else mentioned the same thing. They are probably going to sell the property. It's going to happen at some point soon. And if so, they're more than willing to talk to you. And that's in a nurture mode. Well, at that point, we hand that right back to the client. They hand it right back to the client. And then it's up to you to make that happen. And you can do that with your mail. You can do it with a lot of other ways to do it. But make some changes to it. Don't just do the same things over and over unless you're getting great success and it's acceptable. If not, split it up. Do half of it to one type of letter that goes out, half of it to another. Last thing I'd say is, if you're in multiple counties, even if they're adjoining counties, every place has its own personality. And you may want to vary the content of your letter based on where it's going. If for example, you're in, I'll use a pretty dramatic example. You could be in upstate New Jersey, and you could be mailing something into Newark, New Jersey, and 40 miles away is a very rural area. 2 different counties adjoining, they're touching each other, but you want to vary that letter. You may not be talking about a metropolitan or urban area. You're talking about more rural. So you may want to maybe make some more common statements that touch on that and make those kind of changes. So don't just blindly do it. And we'll work with you. Our MISs will work with you to help you get those letters designed to support your needs to make those things happen. And anything you need to help there, we'll be glad to give you. Guys, we're at the top of the hour here. If any of our other coaches or anybody else has anything, please raise your hand. If not, we're going to bring ourselves to a close here. We're trying to be really respectful of your time and not let these run too awfully long past the top of the hour. And I don't see any hands up with that, Jimmy. I'm going to say it's time, bud.
All right, another great call. 2 calls to action, reminders. Use the power of this group. If you have a deal you need help with anywhere in the country, email me. And another call to action, please, if you have a buyer agency agreement or a seller agreement with all the new NAR, with the new rules taking effect, share it with us, please. Let us put them all together, and we'll share it with you, with all of you. I want to thank everybody who did share today. I want to thank everybody who was here, particularly those who actively participated. And I want to challenge each of you, take one idea that inspired you on this call, go out and put it into practice, and come back next Thursday and share your results with the group. Thank you, guys. Have a great week. Same time next Thursday. Take care.